Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to yet another Lead Squared fireside chat. My name is Karthika and I'm from Lead Squared's marketing team. And I'm really grateful for all of you all who have joined today. Today, we will be discussing a very exciting topic, which is reshaping the edtech industry in 2023. Now, as the topic suggests, today's discussion will be mainly on the edtech industry, but anyone and everyone who wants to join us, who wants to learn from our wonderful panel of speakers, are welcome to join us. So, before we get to the actual session, I would love to welcome our speakers for the day. We have Miss Kathy Jane, who is the Vice President of Operations and Strategy at Rise. Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really happy to have you here. Please tell us a bit about you and your journey so far.
Thank you, Kartika, for having me. I'm Khyati Jain, and as Kartika said, I work as the Vice President in Operations for Strategy at Rise. And my experience has predominantly been in the education space. I started off teaching in low-income schools in Mumbai as a Teach for India Fellow. I chose to do my master's in public policy with a focus on education policy post that. And that's when I kind of realized that. I was really passionate about upskilling and reskilling, and that's how my journey into higher ed began. And I've been working towards higher education globally and in India over the last 4 years.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That just makes us realize more that we have lots and lots to learn from you. So, really looking forward to that today.
Thank you.
And let me introduce our next speaker for the day, Miss Jagrati Bhargav. Jagrati is Lead Square Senior EdTech Marketer, my wonderful colleague, and I'm really glad that Jagrati, you could join us for yet another session. We've had a session before as well. So, Jagrati, yes, please tell us a bit about you and what you'd love to discuss today.
Thank you so much, Kartika, for that lovely introduction. So, as Kartika mentioned, I work for Lead Squared and I handle the EdTech marketing vertical. And I'm hoping to have a really good chat with Kathy and sort of discuss what is the journey ahead for EdTechs in 2023.
Of course, thank you so much, Jagrati. Looking forward to learning from you both today. And to our audience, unfortunately, our other two speakers could not join us today. They had emergencies that they had to take care of. So, nevertheless, we are going to have a wonderful session today. But again, before we get to that, I'm really sorry, but I have a few pointers to the audience as well. So, in case you have any questions throughout the session, please do put them up towards the chat box. It'll be towards the right side corner of your screen, so feel free to add it whenever necessary. And you can also see the chat option. This is where we will be networking throughout the session. So anything you want us to know about yourself, please feel free to put that up over there as well. And we will also have a poll tab towards the right side corner of your screen. This is where we will be publishing a couple of polls, very few during the discussion. So please do engage with them. We would love to hear from you. So, with that, I will quickly hand the session over to Jagrati. Thank you so much once again. Let me quickly pop back to the backstage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kartika. Yeah, so I think, Kathy, we can dive straight into the topic and sort of speak
Absolutely.
about, yeah,
Yes.
sort of speak about the trend that the edtech industry has seen in 2022, 2021, and it has seen a fair bit of lows in the recent past.
Yeah.
So, with that, keeping that in mind, how are we sort of shifting our focus on profitability, on growth, and how are we maximizing scale?
Absolutely. So I think I'd like to start at 2020, 2021, during the pandemic when I think the industry kind of reached an inflection point, right? And it took off. And we saw all of the players in the country, and even globally, doing really well, right? And suddenly we were engaging with learners online. There was a demand for everything online. And I think the edtech industry really flourished during those 2 years. But as we came out of the pandemic, we realized that um, the fully online model was maybe not sustainable, or maybe we were not, as an audience, ready for it. And we saw that a shift towards maybe a hybrid model would be more prudent for edtech companies. So we do see a lot of companies in the K-12 space also take that up. Upskilling and reskilling for working professionals has predominantly been online, though I don't see any change there. But when we look at universities as well and their requirements, I think they've also kind of pivoted to a hybrid or an offline model, and that's the requirement. And I think as an industry, maybe we weren't prepared for that hybrid, that shift to hybrid, and that's where a lot of edtechs kind of took a hit last year. But if you see whoever survived and whoever's still in the market, they're doing really well. They're going very strong. But and as far as the funding crunch and the funding winter is concerned, I think that's across the board, and I think edtech is no exception to that. I think that's just the market globally, and that's what's happening everywhere in the world. So and edtech wasn't as an industry not immune to it. So I think that also is just a small blip in the industry that we'll have to wait out.
So true, yeah. So I think what we can also talk about is how sort of the industry is moving more towards getting data, getting information, getting insights before taking any decisions, so that they not only judge on sentiments but also on the numbers that they have to make. Because as we know, with the funding crunch, we also have a sort of a pressure from the investors to show the ROI and to always focus on what channels are growing for them. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree with you. I think in edtech, there's two sets of data that are very important, at least to us at Rise. That's what we look. That's how we look at our data. There's obviously data to grow the business. You're looking at your sales and marketing metrics. You're looking at your operational metrics, and then the second is your student data. And how am I collecting and leveraging student data to then enhance my user experience, right? But to speak about the first metric here, that's our sales and marketing metrics and your business, your numbers. It's more important than ever in the history of the industry, especially if you're doing D2C, to start collecting data and using that data to draw insights in terms of what's working, how you want to position your brand, how you want to target your audience, right? How's your sales team performing, not just in terms of your revenue, but also in terms of your input metrics. And given how crowded that market's become, your edge comes from how much data you can collect and you can analyze. So I completely agree with you. I think that's the need of the hour if you want to survive in this market, in this condition right now.
If you don't mind my asking, how is the Rise coping with what kind of metrics or what kind of data points do you look at on a daily basis and then sort of tweak your strategies?
Right. So I think the first thing that we look at is we look at our input metrics. So we're looking at how many calls are being made, how my inside sales team is performing. Right. The second set of metrics is, am I enabling my inside sales team to do their job? So what are the leads that they're getting? What is the cost of the lead that they're getting? We go into a little bit more detail when we look at our marketing metrics, where we start looking at, okay, where are my leads coming from? Where have my warm leads come from? Where have my conversions come from? So we can target those areas specifically. Then we look at differentiating in terms of we work with working professionals and students. So then we target both those markets differently. So it's predominantly on a daily basis. We're looking at what is my business development team doing. So we track that very closely. We have a lot of systems and processes in place. And because we use LSQ as our CRM, a lot of that data comes from the CRM. We do a lot of call auditing. And we also track our marketing metrics on a daily basis. And I think a good practice that we have internally is that we meet regularly as a unit and look at what the pipeline is looking like, what we need to do to course correct. So, for example, we are reaching the end of the month now. So a lot of pressure is going into, okay, what did we do in the next 10 days to kind of maximize converting that pipeline that we have already. So that's how we do this at Rise.
That's great. I think it's a good segue because you mentioned about pipelines as well as how which of the marketing channels are working for you. So my next question would be, how do you identify those channels of acquisition? Have you discovered in many of your experiments any new channels that have worked for you?
So I think We started our business during the pandemic as well. So a lot of our marketing is online. We're also an online EdTech company. So we do want to engage with the users online. So a lot of social media, digital marketing predominantly. And that's where primarily our marketing budgets go towards. But in the last year, we've also started engaging with our target audience offline, right? With students going back to colleges, with offices opening up, we've done a lot of offline activation. So we did a lot of hackathons, we did a lot of events in colleges to kind of engage with students, and that's given us very good results. So for us, I think in the next year, this financial year moving forward, that's also going to be something that we're going to keep doing. We're going to meaningfully try and engage with our audience or our target audience offline.
I think that's a very good point that you mentioned because I recently did read that one of your hackathons have just finished, Get Set Hackathon, and you had participation from close to 22,000
Yes,
people.
yes,
Yeah, and that's a lot of volumes.
yeah.
So I'm sure that channel is working for you clearly. And would you tell us a little bit more about what kind of planning goes? How do you look at offline channels differently, etc.?
Absolutely. So I'll speak specifically about Get Set Hack. And this was something that we wanted to do for a while. From our inception, we realized that hackathon is something where people kind of engage with us by doing as opposed to just seeing or listening to Rise. And we really wanted to build that channel where there's two-way communication between our target audience and us, right? And where they're doing something, engaging with us meaningfully. So I think that was our main intention when we were looking at Get Set Hack. But when we started the hackathon, honestly, we were looking at 2 to 5,000 participants and registrations. And there came a point when our website kind of crashed because there was so much volume on it. And we hit 10,000 and 13,000, then eventually 22,000. When we did hit 22,000 registrations, we also got a call from different media houses telling us that this was the largest online cybersecurity hackathon that was conducted in the world. At which point we realized the scale at which we had kind of done this event. Um, so with that, we want to kind of make this an annual event that we do. I do think you'll be seeing another version of this later this year. But I think in terms of planning, even though the hackathon, it was a cybersecurity hackathon, so it had to be online because people were kind of looking at a case online and solving that online. And but we did a lot of offline activation. So we actually picked colleges in different regions of the country and went and set up booths there. We did small festivals there and engaged with people offline to kind of get them interested in the hackathon. And then I think post the hackathon, what was key for our teams was also engaging with each and every person that registered or reached out to us to make sure that they're not dropping out of our funnel. So I think our team did a very good job there to kind of make sure that we were getting the outcomes that we had anticipated from that hackathon. But yeah, the idea with the hackathon essentially was just to participate and engage with our audience, uh, in new ways.
That's great. And I think one great point that you mentioned was about how your team sort of made sure that they could engage and nurture and touch base with each and every person that registered. And I just wanted to ask about that. Like you mentioned that you have two sets of personas, right? You have students also, which are like right out of high school and getting into university, and you have working professionals and different sort of messaging and different product values sort of resonate with them. So how do you strike a balance between both?
That's a tough one, honestly. So, you've got the same product, and that's actually being marketed to the different audience sets, and a lot of it you can do via digital marketing through targeted ads. So, I think the first step is just attracting the audience, but 60% of I think the work on that, on how we differentiate, is done by our sales team, right? Because once the lead is in, something that we constantly teach our sales team and we train them on is something called consultative selling, where they sit down, they understand what the client requires, and then consult with them on which program would be the best and how it would meet their long-term career requirements, and how different specific parts of that program would then enable them to do their jobs better or to get employment for that matter. So I think a huge part of how we differentiate our products and make sure that it's fitting the requirements of a working professional and a student is how our sales team interacts with them, our inside sales team talks to them.
And I'm just going to do sort of a shameless plug, but in terms of technology
Yes.
and the tech stack that you use, how does that come into the picture to set your processes straight, as well as give those cues to your team members that, oh, these are the action points that I would like to probe upon?
Right. So I think, yeah, NSQ's been with us since the beginning of our journey, honestly, and it's been a learning curve for our team as well. When we first implemented the software to where we are today, it's seen multiple iterations, which I think our teams have gone through together. But something that we realized halfway was that we work backwards from the kind of inputs that we want, right, or other outputs that we want. So if there's a specific insight that I'm looking for, then I will structure my data accordingly. And when I'm looking at structuring my data, that talks directly to how the CRM is functioning, right? So a lot of points on, okay, this is the kind of persona that certain associates are engaging with, are doing really well with, and this is the time that we should be calling them, this is the time that the follow-up should be happening. I think all of those nuances and smaller details do come from our CRM, right? We pull those reports from our CRM on a daily basis, sometimes 2-3 times a day, to make sure that those insights are going back to the business development team and the business development leaders. So yeah, I think your tech stack and how you manage your tech stack makes all the difference in the world. Um, and I think another thing that's really helped us there is auditing calls that our BD team is making, right? And just understanding the smaller nuances of where they're going wrong, where they can do better, and then constantly training them on that is another data point that we look at.
That's great. And I think when with the Get Sec hat, the hackathon that you just did, the volumes that would have come in, there might be certain process level differences that you would have seen, because earlier your teams were not, they were capable of handling volumes, but they're not seen it in action. So, how did were there any process level changes that you introduced, or did you see a pattern where, okay, the out of when so many volumes come in, this is the sort of step by step plan we should take?
Absolutely. So I think a mistake that I personally made was I wasn't prepared for that volume of leads or that volume of engagement to be coming in, right? And if you look at what we've tried to do at Rise is we've tried to keep our teams very lean, right? One of the reasons for that was all the layoffs that were happening around in the market, and we were like, okay, we're not falling victim to that. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't hiring over and above. And one of the ways that edtechs or any other company for that matter caters with higher volumes is by hiring more people, onboarding more people, and training them to cater to those needs. And we didn't want to do that because we knew there was a small period of time that we needed to kind of cater to those needs. So we did have a lot of process level changes that came in. We introduced a lot more technology. We introduced a lot more automation, for example, IVRs, right? To hit as many leads as possible, to make sure that my team is predominantly working with warm or hot leads as opposed to calling, wasting time and spending time on talking to each and every person so that their time is being optimized. Um, right. And then in terms of when we are doing those qualification calls, what are the different mediums that we're doing those qualification calls, how that feedback is coming back to us. All of that, I think, were process level changes that we had to make to manage that volume.
That's great. If we have to talk about Rise as a product, as a company, as a belief, we've seen that y'all have like sort of discovered and also been successful in blending industry as well as universities, like the expectations of both. So, how did you sort of discover that, and how did you identify that gap?
So I think that it's been a journey for us, honestly. So when we started the journey, our CEO, Mr. Gaurav Bhatia, and I, we worked together in the past, and we would work in higher education abroad, right? And one of the questions that we would repeatedly mull over is, um, people who have the resources to study abroad, it's all well and good. It's good. It's great. They have access to multitude of resources. But what about people in the country that don't have the resources to go study abroad? Do they not deserve a quality education? Do they not deserve the same exposure? And I think it's with that insight and with that question that we kind of came to rise and started building this company. And we realized when we started kind of talking to people in universities and students, we realized that the biggest gap is that a lot of young graduates or even a lot of mid-career professionals that maybe want a promotion, that want to switch jobs, don't have the necessary skills, and then they take up online classes or evening classes or distance education degrees, which is basically just a booklet or a set of videos that's not necessarily adding value. So when we started talking to industry, and I think our first partner in this was KPMG in India. We spoke to them and we said, okay, we want to solve this problem. The model that came about was that we'll build a model where the curriculum, the delivery, the assignments, everything that goes into an excellent education will be co-curated by the university and by an industry partner. And that model, I think, worked for us really well because the students get the best of both worlds. So that's the story.
That's great. It's fantastic. And in terms of, because you've been interacting with a lot of universities as well as industry folks, in India especially, how far do you think the university landscape is ready for digitization?
Oh, I think they're more than ready. I think the pandemic really pushed us as a country to embrace digitization across the board. I think fintech was one very big example of that. Health tech was another one, and edtech, of course, also kind of had to do it. We didn't have a choice, right? As an industry, as institutions. But I think a lot of institutions have stuck with it, right? They've realized that brick and mortar and classrooms to build that infra, to maintain that infra is a very huge cost. And if you want to build a system that allows for widespread, large scale education to reach more people than you can through your offline medium, then the only way to do it is either online or hybrid. And because when we speak to different universities, we do realize that there is that that dream, that fire, that desire to kind of make that happen for themselves. And I think they're all looking for resources and ways and strategies to do it. And that's where again Rise wants to help them out.
That's great to hear. I think there are a lot of university folks in our audience as well today, and they would be more than happy to hear that, yeah, we are ready for the next level in education and in providing education.
Yeah.
I think one of the important topics that I would also like to touch upon is retention. Because yeah, you've sort of gotten so many people into your funnel. Yes, a good bunch of them have also converted. But how do you sort of build that well-oiled machine where they are again and again coming back to you, becoming loyalists as well as ambassadors for you?
Um, this, I think, again is a very tough, process to kind of build. It's also a cultural nuance that you have to kind of build into your organization, in my opinion. And something that I think we as a company were very, very hell bent upon from the beginning was that we are customer centric. So the customer always comes first, and then it's the team, and then it's yourself. So from the time you join the company, to all your daily interactions, I think that's something that's deeply ingrained. So it doesn't matter who it is when they're engaging with the customer, we push them to engage meaningfully. That's one. But outside of that, I think with retention, one of the biggest challenges we faced was because it was online. The students get to kind of in even on online we had live lectures and we had asynchronous content, but the students do have freedom to kind of study when they want to, and that can go either way, right? They can either do their work or they can not do it and show up to class and say, hey, I don't know what's going on. And we did hit that roadblock initially, which is when we started setting up our customer success, our customer relationship management processes in a way where on a regular basis, everyone is being reached out to. They're given they're given trackers on their progress. We're telling them, okay, this is where you are, this is where your class is, and this is where we need you to be. Um, we also worked very closely with our partners because they do a lot of the delivery, and our academic and industry partners on training their instructors and their teachers on how to engage with the student. And another thing that we've been doing recently is we've been collecting a lot of feedback from our students in terms of what's going well, what's not, what we can do better, and then working on it on real time, right? So I think for me, retention is um, an outcome of how you engage with your client. Of course, it's the product, but also how are you making a difference in your client's life? And we try to go over and above to make sure that we're able to meet all the requirements in this purview.
Sounds great. I think one thing that I think has helped you also make sure that yeah you are going on the right path is because Rise is also expanding, not
Yeah.
only in terms of India, because you're also targeting tier 2 and tier 3 cities with your programs, but you have also recently partnered with a bunch of universities in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So how did you come upon that experience? How welcoming were they when you started off?
Right. So I think our journey in Indonesia has been a learning for us and our team as well. But it started off honestly as just an exploratory trip where we decided, okay, let's go meet with universities because the market's very similar. The economy is also moving in a very similar direction, and I think their requirements as an economy are very similar to ours as India. So outside of the language being different, um, the language of instruction, we felt like it was a very good fit in terms of replicating the model of working with universities for upskilling and reskilling. And once we got there, it didn't take us too much time to kind of get those contracts out of the way because we realized that the problems that we see in higher education in India are actually very similar there. In fact, we came up with a new education policy in 2021, so just a year after India did, right? And very similar mandates as well, where they're talking about changes in pedagogy, increase in research output, and increase in outcome-based education for students as opposed to rote learning, right? So a lot of their mandates were very similar. Um, and with that, I think we started moving forward and we started pushing. We also realized we had a leg up because the Indian higher education space is a little bit more aware when it comes to what the students want, where the students are going, how it links back to industry. So I think that insight also helped us kind of develop our market there. And we were able to kind of set up operations very quickly. So now we're looking to expand our team in Indonesia as well and kind of grow that audience for us as well. But yeah, I think for us, similar to what happens in tier 2 and tier 3 markets in India, you need a different, your selling cycle is different, how you engage with the customer is different, the language is different. So those have been learnings for us in terms of how to tackle that.
That's great. So I think we already, in the past half an hour of our conversation, we've discovered what different channels of acquisition that can be used. Kathy has mentioned all the offline channels and aspects that we need to look at as a business, as well as marketing to tier 2, tier 3 cities, so that we just don't cater to our urban population, and we also uh, truly expand the kind of opportunities we have to people who do not have equal opportunities when it comes to India being such a diverse and geographically vast country. And we've also mentioned about how not so far from home we have some people who deal with similar problems, and maybe we do have certain inputs that we can help them out and bridge that gap for them as well. So thank you so much, Kathy. You have been a really wonderful panelist, and I had a very interesting time talking to you.
Thank you, Jagrati.
Thank you so much to both of our speakers as well. To the audience, like I said in the beginning of the webinar, we do have a couple of polls, so please do respond to them. I see that a lot of you have responded to them, but if you haven't already, please do respond to them. And if you have any questions, I don't see any questions coming in right here, But if you have any questions that you wanted to ask us after the discussion, if you want to, the recording is available as well. So maybe you can go back to the recording. And in case you have any more questions that you want us to ask Kathy or even Jagdi for that matter, please do let us know through email, or we can even connect on LinkedIn. So please feel free to reach out to us there. With that, I think it was a really informative session. Thank you so much for joining us, Kathy. I know that it must be a very busy day, and Jagriti as well. Thank you so much.
Thank
Kathy,
you.
any closing remarks that you'd love to add to the session?
No, I think I'd like to thank EdSquares for having me on this webinar, and I think it's been a journey for both our companies together. And EdSquare has been instrumental in helping us build and get as far as we have in the last couple of years. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the support.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Jagriti, if you'd like to add something.
I had a wonderful time talking to Kathy. I know it was a little bit of a short session, but it had a lot of informative insights for our audience. So I'm glad we will also sort of bundle it up in a shorter email and send it across to our registrants so that they can, in case they missed out on attending the live session, they can get those insights nevertheless.
For sure, for sure. I can see there is one question from Mr. Chaitanya
Okay.
actually. Is it okay if I take that up now, or can I take the question up, Kathy, if that's okay?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
All right, great. Okay, coming to the question, how are you managing CAC CAC as the volume from offline may not be high for every event while managing CPL also? Okay.
All right. So I think you're right. I think the CAC is a little bit higher when it comes to your offline engagements or your offline lead gen exercises. However, for us, what we do is when we have a certain budget that's going towards an event, right? The sales team also has a target where it's higher, and because you're engaging with the lead offline, in our experience, we have seen higher conversions coming in from college students when we're looking at offline engagements. So managing CAC offline has honestly not been the challenge. For us, managing CAC online during certain periods of the year is what kind of is something that we struggle with, especially when we're looking at Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google as our lead gen sources. So I think that's an ongoing struggle that my marketing team is working towards. I think Kartika and Jagriti will also be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Honestly, 100%. I think with the offline channels sort of working better for us, and also there's the component of brand awareness, the branding and the time, the kind of perspective that students or our target audience adds to our brand. That is something which cannot be fully quantified, and you might realize the impact of that 6 months, 3 months, even 1 year down the line. And then you realize that, oh yes, like this is one event that I did that had so much of impact. And this is why we sort of believe in keep going at it, keep doing it again and again.
Definitely, I completely resonate with that. Okay, I hope that answers the question, Chaitanya. We have one more question from Neeraj. I will take that up quickly. What is a strategy to manage a a payer interactions?
Um, I'm glad this came up because this is actually one of the hardest interactions in your when you're looking at business development to manage, right? Because the person who's actually going to be going through that experience is different from the person that's shelling out the money. But I think here what we do is the idea is to kind of keep meaningfully engaging with the parent over and over, even though the person that's taking the product or using the product is different. So the minute we realize that our lead does not have the paying capacity themselves, we start probing and trying to understand, okay, who is it that is going to actually be funding your education in our case. And then the idea is to do as many interactions and meetings with that person, maybe do a demo for that payer, that parent, and call them into a live session as well to kind of audit it. The idea is to build trust with the parent then. So then the selling cycle is a little bit different when it becomes when the person that's going to be that you're convincing is the parent as opposed to the student. But the idea is essentially to build trust, and that's what our business development team works towards.
Of course, trust is definitely key in this
Yes.
scenario, I'm sure. Jagati, would you like to add something to it, or?
Yeah, so this is something I definitely agree with, that when your end customer as well as the decision maker is different, you need to sort of interact, engage, and build that trust and show off the product USP to both that personas. And the kind of messaging that resonates with one might not be resonating with the other person, because of course the end objective or the end goal is different for both of them. So I think if you understand what is the exact pain point you're solving for each of your persona, that would, I think, answer your most of your woes for convincing somebody.
Of course. Well said, definitely. I actually don't see any more questions coming in. All right, thumbs up. Thank you so much, audience. Okay, I think with that, we can maybe conclude our session. Kathy, really looking forward to having you in maybe another session very soon, because it was really
Thank you.
informative
Thank you.
and very knowledge packed for sure. Jakti, thank you so much for joining us today, and to the audience as well. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. I saw a lot of emojis and reactions coming in, which really makes us feel like you have taken away as much as we have from the session. So thank you so much once again. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.